I am Father Jeremiah Mutuku. I'm the chaplain of St. Augustine Mwingi Boys Secondary School. Thank you. My dear viewers and listeners, I would like to welcome you to our Sunday's homily, the Feast of Pentecost. The Feast of Pentecost was started in the early centuries of the church, the beginning of the church. And before we give the background, I want to tell you where the word Pentecost comes from. The Pente is from the Greek word Pente, which is 50, and it is a time when Israelites were celebrating 50 days after the feast of Passover. And Israelites would build huts and tents to wait for the great feast. And it was used as a feast to celebrate the first harvest of the wheat and the barley. So it was a time of celebration and bringing the first fruits of their harvest to the table of Jerusalem. And that is why it was called a Pentecost. Pentecost was also adopted by the Israelites to celebrate the day Moses gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments. So it was a day when they would commemorate the covenant that God had with his people on Mount Sinai. So this first Pentecost, which was celebrated in a very special way, was a time when the Israelites had come to celebrate that feast of Pentecost, or in other language, the feast of Sukkot in Hebrew, when they would all gather in Jerusalem to bring their first fruits and also to celebrate this day when Moses was given the tablet of the law of God. So they were gathered, and the disciples of Christ were gathered in the upper room for fear of the Jews and people who had gathered in Jerusalem. And all of a sudden, a wind came, and there was earthquake, and tongues of fire. And tongues of fire settled on the head of every disciple. From there, they started speaking in different tongues. But the funny thing was that every tribe and every language represented Jerusalem that particular day, everyone could hear his language being spoken. There are a few things that we can learn from this feast of Pentecost. First, it was the birthday of the church. If you remember, the Spirit of God filled Mary at the birth of Jesus Christ. It is the Spirit that hovered over Blessed Virgin Mary to conceive the Son of God, Jesus Christ. This day, also the Spirit of God came to the disciples, and it became the birthday, the new birth of a new establishment, that is the church. That is why after the Pentecost, the disciples had to walk out and to evangelize in every village, because they were given the power of God. The Pentecost also was a day when all the people were gathered, and it was a day when God brought a new language to humanity. If you remember the book of Genesis, chapter 11, is a time when the people started building the Tower of Babel. Babel was from the word Babylon, and they wanted to reach God. That Tower of Babel was a sign of pride, a sign of self-love, a sign of a personal aggregation, a sign that a human trying to amplify his actions before God. But what happened during the Tower of Babel was the tower fell down, and the voices and the languages were scattered. Everyone was speaking a different language, and there was disunity. So what was disunited at the Tower of Babel is united today at Pentecost, because different languages were there, different people from every race, every language, but they spoke one language. And the language that they spoke was the language of love. So my dear friends, today as we celebrate this feast of Pentecost, is a day when God gives us a rebirth as human persons. He gives us a new spirit. The spirit that hovered at creation. Before creation, there was a spirit that was hovering over the waters. Is the same spirit that has today hovered over the church, and the church has been born. So the new church that is born is giving the new spirit in the church, the spirit of love, and the spirit of self-control. My dear friends, today as we celebrate this great feast of the church, let us listen to the voice of God and the Spirit of God as He gives us His 7 gifts And from the 7 gifts, we have to bear the fruits. And the fruits of the Holy Spirit are known to you and to me. We need to evaluate ourselves whether we are still bearing the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Because without the fruits of the Holy Spirit, we live a life of the people of Babel. My dear friends, live the life of love, the life of charity, the life of kindness and generosity, the life of love one another. That is the spirit that is brought at Pentecost. Thank you.